Hi, this is Chris Walden with my appropriate use presentation accompanied by my Prezi. Alrighty, let's get started here. Appropriate use. Now, some of you might be wondering what this even means. So, what is appropriate use? Appropriate use, also known as fair use, is best defined by Stanford University in their Library of Records. It says this, quote, in its most general sense, a fair use is any copying of copyrighted material done for a limited and, quote, transformative, unquote, purpose, such as to comment upon, criticize, or parody a copyrighted work. Such uses can be done without permission from the copyright owner. In other words, fair use is a defense against a claim of copyright infringement. If you use qualities as a fair use, then it would not be considered an illegal infringement. So to most of you, that probably doesn't mean anything. So I'll try and sum it up in simpler terms. What they're trying to say is appropriate use or fair use is a way to make sure that if you are using someone else's work off the internet, or you are copying an article out of a magazine or something, putting it into your own works, then they just want to ensure that the person who's writing that or who wrote that the first time is getting due credit where they should be, and you aren't taking credit for it on your own terms. Now, this can also carry over to many other things such as social media and using other internet resources. And this is something that we'll touch more on base with here in being in the elementary schools and whatnot, and having students that are learning how to use the internet and exploring different things on the internet. And the little picture there has some hints. It says, don't use easy passwords. What that would pretty much pertain to anything you're using on the internet if you're a student, especially one that's just getting comfortable using the internet. If anything asks you for a password or you have to sign up for anything to use it, make sure your password's something you're going to remember. Also, make sure it's something that other people aren't going to be able to figure out and possibly hack into your information and steal things from you. Do not give out your full name, address, or phone number to anyone online that you don't trust or know in person. Generally, if you're going to be using this in elementary school, students are going to know their guidelines and what they can and cannot be on the internet or what they're looking at. And I mean, in some cases, they have to sign up for certain websites and whatnot to use it. They have to use in order to fulfill a research project or something within the class. But most times, you're not going to be doing anything where they need to be giving out any of their personal information. Number three, never use a program that you don't know. And once again, more often than not, students aren't going to be using something in the classroom that they're not familiar with or that they haven't used before that you haven't showed them how to use. So this isn't stuff that really is going to matter a whole lot, but it's just kind of helpful hints to make sure they're on the right track. What should students know? It is a teacher and the school's duty to educate their students on these laws and also to educate them on their own rights as a student. If a student writes a paper of significance and a fellow student or even a teacher tries to use any of the information that the student has written without giving them due credit, the person that used it is at fault. Students have just as many rights as anyone else when it comes to things like this, even though it is often overlooked and ignored. And once again, that might make absolutely zero sense to you, but as a teacher, you need to make sure that your students are being protected also. In instances like this, where if they write something that gets published or something that's very important, say they wrote a research paper about rattlesnakes in the Midwest and how overpopulated they're getting. They write this paper, and one of their classmates later on in the year tries to write the same kind of paper. They go on and borrow some of their ideas from the first person, and then they don't give them credit for it. The second student is just as much fault as anyone else that ever tries to copy any information from another writer without giving them credit. They need to recognize that that work is the first person's work and that it wasn't their own thoughts and they can easily use that first person's writings as something in their bibliography or works cited, and make sure that they cite it in their writing, and they'll be just fine. So just quick little things that like that you as a teacher can show your students just to make sure that they're being protected and following all the rules and guidelines that they need to be. How do we keep students safe? As a teacher, there are so many things we can do in order to keep our students safe when using the internet for information. Instruct them on the do's and don'ts. And what I mean by when I say this is show them what they should and shouldn't be using on the internet, what they can and cannot do when they're using informational resources off the internet or trying to gather information for a research paper. Show them how to cite things, how to give credit to someone else, how to make sure that if they are using someone else's information, they give them credit. Also, this ties right into the social media thing. Show them what they can and cannot be on. Show them the websites that the school allows them to be on or that you, the teacher, will allow them to be on in the classroom. And if there's certain websites that they shouldn't be on, you can go on and block them on the server, on the school's server, just to ensure that the students aren't looking at things they shouldn't be, or that they aren't going to be putting themselves in danger for getting in trouble or anything else like that. Second bullet, then, show them how to be protected. Once again, this ties into the previous slide that students have just as many rights and need to be just as protected as anyone else when it comes to using information on the internet or out of any other published source of information. So if a student's writing something and someone else tries to use it as their own work, once again, they're at fault and the student needs to have credit. And showing them how to be protected can also tie into the social media aspect of things, that you as a teacher want to, if they are signing up for things like this, which is coming more and more common, that kids younger and younger are signing up to be on Twitter and Facebook, and I don't think MySpace gets used anymore, but social media things like that, Instagram, make sure if they have a social media application like this, that they're using it how it's intended to be used and that they're not putting things on there that can get them in trouble. Follow protocols on everything. Your school should have a written list of things they should and shouldn't be doing on the internet with the students, and also a written list on how to handle issues regarding plagiarism, copyright infringement, stuff like that. You as a teacher just need to make sure that you're following them to a T. Second slide over here on the right. This goes way beyond just using the internet as a source of information. Applies to using different different websites, especially social media. Once again, I kind of hit on a lot of these points in my first part of this page here. Don't give out personal information. Once again, this is just a way to protect your students or yourself on the internet, so you're not getting information stolen from you, and so people can't hack in and get your own personal information off of there. Never answer questions that feel unnecessary. If you, as the teacher, have a student that's signed up for a website and it's asking them questions that are unnecessary, such as what's your social security number, what's your address, things like that, they probably don't need to be on that at that time. It's probably a little out of their league in terms of how old they are, unless it's a junior high or high school student, something like that. If it doesn't feel right, don't do it. You as a teacher have to ask yourself this often when you're teaching your students. If they're using something and you feel like it might be a little out of their range, out of their league, out of their comfort zone, don't allow them to do it. You wouldn't want your child or your son or daughter, if you weren't the teacher, if you're just a parent, you wouldn't want their teacher to be allowing them to do things on the computer that they shouldn't be, or that they doing illegal things like copyright infringement, plagiarism, stuff like that. These, I mean, they don't seem like a real big thing right now, but it's something we have to get used to cracking down on before it becomes a big issue. The internet is a great tool if used correctly. There's not ever been any more truer statement that the internet is one of the most magnificent things this world has seen. but can also be one of the greatest weapons. You can put one thing on the internet and it can go viral in a matter of minutes, and you can ruin somebody's life. You can get yourself into more trouble than you'd ever know. If you use the internet correctly, you'll often find great success in it, and it can be one of your greatest assets. Where can information be found on the internet? Plenty of great websites to find useful information, many of which can help you as a student out greatly. Some examples are Google Scholar. Google Scholar is a spun off application of Google where it's a different website, but you type in anything you're looking up or something you're researching, and it will pull up scholarly acclaimed articles or writings about what you're looking at, something that has some substance and will often give you better information than just a normal Google search. Any online library from a university. Like I said previously, I quoted a Stanford Library article that and any online library generally is a great way to find information. It's usually pretty important. Online web pages of acclaimed writers. This is another place to find good information. If a writer's critically acclaimed or has some backing by them, then it's usually pretty credible information. And professional blogs, this kind of ties into the previous point that if it's a professional page of a professional writer, then you can pretty much guarantee the information is going to be important. And all of these you have is a great way to demonstrate appropriate or fair use by citing or giving credit to these people. Things everyone should know. Fair and appropriate use is something that always gets overlooked and pushed aside to students when they are at a young age, when they first start writing papers that might have information that might not be all theirs. There is no better time to start informing them from day one. If this can be done at an early age, they will be well educated enough that they won't have to worry about being in the wrong at an older age when it could really get them into trouble. This is highly emphasized in college when all papers are submitted through a safe assigned program to check for plagiarism and misuse of information that they might have in their papers. Start them young to ensure success at a later date. That pretty much sums up my whole appropriate use presentation. So hopefully you guys learned something, and talk to you next time.